From architects and witches to trans cartel bosses and Bob Dylan. This week, we'll be ranking the 2025 Oscars Best Picture nominees with special guest Max Martin. This is The Film Angle. Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Let's get into it. And we have a special guest on the show this week, Max Martin. Hello, Max.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to talk Oscars with you.
Yes, so happy to have you on the show, Max. So for everybody who doesn't know, Max is a film critic and a student of all things film. He's just completed his master's in film and television from the University of Bristol and is currently researching his PhD, which is on the seasons in cinema. But you might actually know him best from his Instagram page, which is @MaxMartinReviews, where he writes weekly film reviews as well as recommendations and themed posts and rankings. They're really good. Go check them out if you haven't already. But it is why we thought he would be an excellent guest for today's episode to talk all things Oscars. But Max, I've got to ask, PhD, that's is that where you get to be called a doctor afterwards, or is that
I'll be Dr. Martin in a few years, probably. Yeah, hopefully, if everything goes to plan anyway.
Nice. So how long does that usually take?
I was hoping to do it in 3 years, but so basically I started in January and I got my ID card and it said 2029, which feels miles away. So it's kind of scary that it's going to take me that long, but hopefully I'll do it a bit sooner.
Oh, amazing.
Talk about a hierarchy. You've got PhD, Alex has got a degree, and I've got fuck all. So I just feel like the ultimate cuck here.
To be fair, I'm only doing the PhD because I came out of the Masters and I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to stay in film. But I didn't want to do filmmaking, so it seemed the obvious option.
Did it start with the Instagram page or was it a blog? How did that start?
So earliest is probably back in 2016 when I was still in school. I started doing YouTube reviews, and then from that, a local shopping centre who had a view wanted to get like a local film reviewer in. So I did that for 3 films. Then it kind of all went on the back burner when I was doing A-levels and stuff. So when I went to uni, I kind of did for a joke, made a fake name up and started doing like weird theme posts just to see whether it would take off. Then kind of stopped doing that. But then because I had this massive gap, like 6-month gap between my master's and starting my PhD in January, I changed the name to my normal name and started doing reviews because I've always wanted to do film criticism, really. So
sure,
that's where it started. And then it's just taken off from there, really.
Nice. It is a really good Instagram page, and I like all the kind of themed content you do and stuff. I think it is really good. However, we should probably, for anybody who listens to the podcast, when we have a guest, we ask them to bring 4 films to the table to allow our audiences to get to know them better. So I guess it kind of gives you an introduction to your kind of taste. So Max, did you want to let us know kind of those 4 films?
Yeah, so these are just my 4 favorites because I couldn't really decide which to drop and which to bring something a bit niche in. But these kind of like, I wouldn't say they're your typical like IMDb top 250 or anything. So hopefully there's a few films that are new to some people. So I'll start with my first one, which is my favorite film of all time, is the Umbrellas of Cherbourg by Jacques Demy.
Oh, yeah, I think you're in good company with Kris.
So I remember when we were doing the French New Wave in uni and my lecturer just showed a trailer for it. And I was just like immediately like, yes, that's for me. So I actually bought it that day to like rent on Amazon, I think. And yeah, I just love the musical aspect of it where it's kind of, it's not songs, it's kind of just sung dialogue. And it's just this really poppy, lovely to look at film. But underneath it, is kind of this doomed romance that is a kind of like a subgenre that I love to explore, where you've got this kind of perfect romance, but he's taken away from it for the Algerian War. And then obviously her mum's kind of trying to sell her off to a richer man. So kind of that kind of subgenre is something that I really enjoy. And I think just there's a couple of really great scenes, but I think the final scene is such a killer and just like lingers with you for so long there. So yeah, that's why.
Are you a big musical guy in general in film? Like, do you like the old Hollywood musicals, the French New Wave, that sort of, is that like your kind of bread and butter?
I wouldn't say necessarily, it's just this one really. I mean, I love La La Land and things like that, but I wouldn't say musicals are like obviously my genre. I wouldn't pick it as my favorite genre. It's just
interesting. Yeah,
it's more the doomed romance aspect of it that really I cling to.
It's funny. I actually really like the way you mentioned the trailer before, because it's one of those trailers that's always stuck with me as well. And I think because the trailer is just like a 1 minute breakdown of the entire film, like all the songs are kind of cut up inside of it, and you kind of get the whole feel for the whole movie even just in that one trailer. But yeah, it's a great pick.
I think as well, it's the score for me. It's just
it's massive declarations of bleeding hearts, and
To be honest, I've not actually seen it, but I wouldn't probably consider musicals like one of my favorite genres, as Kris knows already. But I do, when a good one comes along, I like a good one. But doomed romance is a genre of mine that I do love.
It is.
So maybe I do need to push this up the watch list a little
Especially
bit.
French doomed romances.
So true.
I would say it's not everyone's cup of tea, because I remember I saw it in the Watershed in Bristol the end of last year, and just there were bits where you're not supposed to be laughing, but people just cackling in the audience.
Oh, usually a captive audience in the Watershed as well.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit, I don't know what happened, but do you know the scene where they're like walking, but they're not, they're moving, but it doesn't look like they're walking, and he's holding the bike. Do you know that?
Yes, of course.
People just burst out laughing because they couldn't deal with the fact that this was so fantastical.
Yeah, it's the veneer of the film. Yeah, of course.
And people just not on the wave of it. And I guess the kind of like musical where it's not songs is kind of spoken. But
I'm going to tell you right now, Max, you're better than them.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember like scrolling through, because like if you see a film with like, you see a rerun and you go on Letterboxd, you can kind of see the people who've seen it in your audience and going, they're wrong.
It's so true. Yeah.
What's your second film, Max?
So the second one's another kind of Technicolor, really beautiful piece, is All That Heaven Allows by Douglas Sirk. So it's like a really like over the top melodrama, which I kind of think's another, a bit like we talked about with The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, was kind of like something that we're not really used to. It's kind of a bit weird. It's kind of the wrong word, but I guess is how I would describe it.
There's a relationship between both of these movies for sure.
Yeah, and it's kind of the really vibrant colors, which I think always helps. But under it is kind of this beautiful story about a widow who is from a higher class and just being swept up by this younger man who's not of this world, not of this small town community. And I just love it's almost the seasonal aspect of it, because it's kind of set at autumn, winter. It's just very vibey.
Yeah, I watched it last year for the first time, coming off the back of, we covered on the show Imitation of Life. Alex and I both loved that film. And so I need to watch the rest of Douglas Sirk, because I think this guy is like yourself, is my vibe. Those autumnal colors, just falling leaves, Rock Hudson in his flannel jacket. It's great. Yeah. And of course, playing off of Jane Wyman, she's incredible in this movie. And it's obviously Alex introduced me to Far From Heaven, which is kind of like the spiritual remake of this. Yeah. And we watched that first. So coming back and watching this film afterwards is fascinating.
Yeah, which, to be fair, I've not seen All That Heaven Allows, and I keep
you'd
meaning
love it,
to,
Alex,
because I keep meaning to put it on the projector, because I think it'll be great. projector film.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's very melodramatic in the best ways possible. I think it's very like larger than life, over the top.
Say no more. And to be honest, I love Far From Heaven. It's one of my favorite films. So yeah, knowing that is like very heavily inspired by it, I really do need to get around to it. But you know, when you just like, I want to find the right moment for this film, and now I'm gonna like it. I
have so many like films in my watch list that are like these big grand, like best of all time films, and it's just I can never feel like I can find the right moment. So
we're just scared, aren't we? Because we've been told our whole lives that we know I'm going to love this, but like, what if I don't? Like, and that's going to.
And you're like, I need it to be special. Yeah. I can't let it just be an afterthought on a Friday night. I need to like build up to it. But yeah, what's your third film?
Third is Magnolia, which I think's possibly the greatest 3-hour plus film of all time.
Heavy hitters here.
Yeah, so I love Paul Thomas Anderson anyway, and really love Fandom Thread, but I think Magnolia just takes it for me. I just think it just moves so fast, and it's kind of like incredibly paced, and I think it's Tom Cruise's best performance as well.
Yeah, it's something to behold.
And I also love putting it on this list because my mom and dad hate it for the spoilers frog scene. So I respect it to them.
Like, do they hate it in a good way, or is it like you're just
out when they saw it in the cinema?
Awesome. PTA hasn't made a bad film, right? And I'm glad you said Phantom Thread as well, because I think that is my favorite. But like, you could put any PTA film on your top 4, and everyone would be okay with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And he's got another one coming out.
His biggest budget, it's his big blank check.
It's in IMAX as well, this song.
Ooh, yeah, and it's got Leonardo DiCaprio in it, right?
Yeah. I think that's why it's got such a big budget, because I think he's partially financing it.
Oh, interesting.
If I've got my facts right.
He probably comes with a big salary as well.
50% of the sales. Yeah.
What's your final film on your list?
And then my final film is Cinema Paradiso.
Okay. That one I have seen.
I just think it's like the best film about the cinema as a place, and it shows the power of cinema at its best. And I think as cinephiles, these are the films we're kind of like most kind of willing to be good, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
This thing is kind of like the sweetest, like most romantic take about what the cinema is as a structure, as a place for community, and the stories that are told there.
Yeah.
Nicely put.
Kind of like sums up somebody like us, I guess, where your kind of passion is cinema and why it's so powerful, and especially seeing it through like a child's point of view. That's
a good point, actually. I think if you watch this as like a teenage wannabe cinephile, I think that's like the perfect entry point to watch a movie like this. It kind of like just opens that world up even more. Did you watch the director's cut first or the theatrical cut of this movie?
I watched the director's cut.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Because they're completely different movies.
Yeah.
I watched the director's cut first. I don't know if you're the same, Alex.
No, I think I watched theatrical cut first, and I don't think I've ever seen the director's cut.
I definitely would push you to do it because it's an extra hour. Like it adds on a completely darker layer to the film, and like I watched the theatrical cut afterwards, and it was just like I couldn't. It was just not. It cut out 40 minutes of the movie, and I was just like, "Whoa, this is crazy." But yeah, if you ever get a chance to watch it that way, man, it's so good.
Yeah,
either way.
I did that with the Almost Famous, if you've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
I watched the director's cut first. I think it comes out at like 2 hours 40 or something.
Sure.
And I think one evening I really wanted to watch it, but I was like, I'm not committing to 2 hours 40. So I tried looking for the theatrical cut, found it, and within 20 minutes, I'm like, where's this scene? Where's this scene?
Yeah. Sometimes they just make it complicated sometimes, don't they?
Well, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those films with us, and hopefully our audience now knows you a little bit better and what they're getting into when we rank the best picture nominees. Which shall we move on to that segment, guys?
Absolutely.
It's become a bit of a yearly tradition now, where we rank the best picture nominees for this year's Academy Awards. 10 films this year have been nominated, which I think has been the same since we started this, Kris, but I know at one point it was a lot less. But yeah, so 10 films. However, just due to kind of release dates and whatnot, we're only going to be ranking 9 today because we haven't been able to see I'm Still Here, the Brazilian film that was nominated, which I think was like a little bit of a surprise, but its UK release is not until a little bit later this month. But Max, you were able to go see a preview screening of it. Am I right, in Bath?
Last Monday, I trekked out to Bath to go and see it at the Picture House there, which is a really tiny cinema, but yeah, definitely worth the experience.
Nice. And what did you think? Is it a good film?
Yeah, I loved it. I don't really want to overhype it because I think what made it for me was I went in with such low expectations. Obviously, I had expectations because it was Best Fiction nominated, but I kind of had no idea what the film was about. And the guess that I had in my head was completely wrong from minute one. So I kind of thought it was about. So I don't know whether I looked into this and it was wrong or whether I just inferred it and dreamed it up. But I kind of had I'm Still Here as kind of like her husband leaving her and some kind of like family drama thing. But what it kind of is about this ex-congressman. He's kind of left politics. But one day he gets a knock on the door from these armed men and he's taken without his wife, kind of knowing why. We don't know whether this is the army or whether this is the rebel group that the film kind of discusses. And then what kind of happens with it is this kind of really harrowing portrayal of how this family is drawn into a national political debate. And I think what really struck me is it starts off quite slow in a sense. It's kind of a film of two halves where it's talking about the political ideas, but also the opening scene is this kind of like lovely beach scene where her and her family are playing like beach volleyball, beach football, and it's kind of playing with this idea of this kind of idyllic family life with trucks of armed cops driving by. And it's kind of this balance that the film plays with really nicely. And I think it's just a wonderful performance by Fernando Torres, who kind of steals the show for me. We'll talk about it later, but I think Demi Moore and Mikey Madison are both giving great performances, but I think Fernando Torres somehow might even be better than that.
Wow.
And I think what's lovely about the film is because it's kind of in a foreign language, kind of read into it more. And it's kind of like this beautifully national story that is such an important story to tell, but also it feels universal through the language of film. To a lesser extent, we can kind of put the themes of the film through our own lives. This kind of journey of defiance and the power of mothers and things like that. So yeah, I really loved it.
That's awesome, Max. I think we talk about that a lot on the show recently, Alex, where when you get these really incredible films that come along and they relate to nothing on a surface level in your own life, but they're so good that they can transcend that, and you can find ways to have your foot in the door and kind of have, emotionally resonate with those characters regardless.
Empathy through cinema.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. No, thank you for that. It is annoying. I really did want to go see it, and obviously I'm not far from Bath, but I had work commitments which stopped me from going that night.
I didn't have a geographical hope in hell.
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet you had no luck of it.
I had to get a plane ticket to see this thing.
Yeah, and I think so. It is releasing before the Oscars date, but we're having to record this relatively early. Just due to personal commitments. So yeah, we haven't been able to go see it, but I do really want to see it.
It gets quite a wide release because I think the only other film that's really coming out that week is The Monkey. So I'm hoping that it kind of gets to stay in the sun. Maybe the nomination helps that.
I think Apple have distribution, but like you said, I'd rather go see it in a cinema if I could.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, might be on a future episode for sure. We'll let you know our own thoughts there. But yeah, so we will be ranking for us would be 9 to 1. Maybe later, Max, you can tell us where it might have placed.
Yeah.
And it. But
Please do.
we'll all rank 9 to 1 just so it's clearer, I guess. And this is actually how the Oscars vote as well. They rank. So the vote is not like I want this film to win the Best Picture. They rank them, and then it's a culmination of who gets the most votes depending on what kind of spot they're in. So that's why you sometimes get a few surprise hitters in terms of who actually wins Best Picture, because it's not always about who's at number one. Sometimes it's about who's consistently in the middle.
And that's the reason why Coda won a few years ago, because I don't think it was anyone's number one, but it kind of had such goodwill in its campaign that everyone had it in the third or fourth slot. Exactly. Yeah.
Difficult to hate. But yeah, so but we will be ranking these in terms of our preference rather than who we think's going to win. So we're almost thinking like Oscar voters, but probably slightly different because we're not part of the Academy. But we will we'll give some predictions for the rest of the night after we've ranked these. But yeah, should we start with our number 9s?
Let's do it.
Well, Max, shall we give you the honours of going first and let us know which film you hated the most? Or which film did you like the least?
I think it's quite good that you asked me my top 4, because obviously I get to say that one of my favourite films is a musical, because in 9th is Emilia Perez. I don't want to throw more fuel to the fire, but I think it is quite clearly my least favourite film here, and I watched it yesterday just to see how it fitted with, because I saw it back in October, November time, so obviously the discourse around it hadn't kind of swelled up. But yes, I think it is a bit of a mess of a film. I mean, I really love the bold swings it's taking, both in the genre blend, the musical style, and the vibrancy of it. But I think for me, where I kind of lose interest is where you kind of have this drug lord who suddenly transitions and everything is supposed to be all right. And that's kind of like the big plot point where I just kind of lose interest, because I'm like, why does this person get to have this, to turn a new page?
Yeah. No,
it's hard to argue with, Alex.
I mean, I'm the same as you. I watched it before kind of the discourse really kicked off when it actually released on Netflix, and I guess more members of the general public got to see it and were just completely baffled by it, which is fair. Now, it's not my number 9, but it's becoming quite unfashionable to say that I liked it. I think so. But. That's fair. Lead star obviously created a whole mess for herself. Lots of terrible comments, and may have kind of tarnished the film completely. But yeah, I think a lot of people were annoyed anyways. It's a half-baked musical. It's a half-baked trans story. It's a half-baked cartel story, and all of them working together creates this kind of weird dynamic of a film. But yeah, that being said, it's not my number 9. My number 9 is another musical, which I'm going to get a lot of hate for now, I think, but my number 9 is Wicked. It's just my least favorite.
How dare you?
It's just my least favorite film on the list.
Absolutely fine.
It just wasn't for me. It does deserve a rewatch, because I think there was a lot of hype around it, which kind of swayed my own personal feelings about it. But we can chat more about Wicked later, because I assume it comes up higher on your guys' list. Though saying that, Kris, what's your number 9?
Okay, so I do not have any interest in adding to the discourse as well. But
no, you have to.
I think it's fair to say I think I at least like every film on this list. So I caught up with Emilia Perez when it was on Netflix, but I think early Netflix days before the discourse came along. So I'm just going to go with the reaction I had at the time, and I actually quite liked it. I have quite a high pain threshold / tolerance for weirdness, and so I was able to watch the hospital scene with kind of a straight face. I don't know, it's desensitization.
It works in context of the film,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
it really does.
Exactly. Before it was isolated as a TikTok meme and everything, I kind of got caught up in the emotionality of the story. I do agree that the character is super complex and problematic, because you're dealing with somebody, he's murdered thousands of people. But I find that lens just to be interesting, just to see how far they would go in trying to justify this person, trying to justify kind of every character, because every character in this is not a saint. No, and none of them are.
No.
So yeah, I found the journey very like easy to get myself wrapped up in. I actually found some of the songs quite tender and caught up with me. It's a movie where you're very in the moment, and like when you're out of the moment, you're out of the moment. But I was kind of in for the ride. It's my least favorite film on the list. I gotta go with my gut. I can't be a shill, and that's how I felt when I watched the movie. I didn't mind it.
There you go.
But I liked everything else more.
Yeah. Would you say, Max, you didn't mind it, or would you just straight up did not like it?
I'm kind of like very middling on it. I think I'd probably go, if you ask positive or negative, I probably would say negative on a second watch.
Sure.
But I definitely don't hate it like a lot of people seem to. But I think that's kind of like the popular opinion nowadays.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I feel like people are purposely watching the film with their 1 star ready on the tip of the thumb.
I think as well the fact that it got 13 Oscar nominations is the reason, because I think when people go, there's this film and then there's every other film that got 13 nominations, that's obviously not helping. I think if it got 4 or 5.
People really like to kind of bounce on the idea that the Academy's out of touch, and I think like this is a film that like truly shows that there is a massive divide in between like what audiences like and what kind of the critical consensus is. But a lot of industry people seem to like it.
The thing I find annoying is I hear people going, "Oh, it's clearly like the industry haven't watched it and they're just doing it because it's like a story where it's a trans story, so it's ticking a box." And I hate that opinion, because you can enjoy the film and just have a different opinion of it. It doesn't have to be a.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. What's your number 8, Max?
So I've got Wicked, so second musical. So that's why it's good to say.
He does hate musicals.
I do hate. I think it's kind of a weird experience for me, because I saw this opening night just like a packed cinema, and it was just like
the worst way to watch this movie. I would say, yeah.
I just remember like sitting next to someone who, like a family, who'd taken a like 6-year-old daughter, and like, when the BBFC logo came up, she just went, "What's discrimination?" and things like that.
You're in for 2.5 hours
like,
of hell.
The kid wasn't even that bad. It was the mum constantly going to her, "You enjoying it? You enjoying it?" So I think from that moment, it's kind of like,
yes, I am
on an unfair on an unfair level. But I think, what really works is kind of like a joyful story. I think a lot of the songs are great, and even this part 1, I feel like it works as a singular story, but I think I almost wish it had an intermission. It was kind of like part 1, part 2 in the same film, but I guess that was never going to work. And I feel like it's one of the films above a lot of the others, where it feels like it has its heart in the right place, and I think that does a lot for me. But I think where I get frustrated with the film is visually. I think when you're having a film where it's the prequel to The Wizard of Oz, and then you've got this film that looks really dull and washed out and just flat, I think that is where I found my frustrations with the film, because obviously Wizards of Oz is this technicolor marvel. It's this kind of piece of cinema history where we're innovating and color has a meaning, and it's this kind of fantastical world, whereas I think in Wicked Oz just looks like Earth to me.
Sure. Yeah. I agree. Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite films of all time, and the artifice is part of it, and modern day artifice isn't quite the same, right?
I found as well, not just to kick on Wicked for a minute, but I like just the sets look too clean to me. Everything was a little too glossy, and it just didn't feel like a fully fledged world to me, which I guess
is the case, but I feel like there's like a wash of CGI over all the sets, because I found before I saw pictures of like the actual production design, and I'll go that this looks great, but then when you watch it in the film, it kind of something looks off. I don't know what this.
I think the sets are definitely like surviving in the film, and you get that sense of depth. But I feel like they give like it's Shays University, like the first third of the movie, and you feel like the walls are just like very matte, and they've not been lived in. I think that's what it feels like. Like, not to put on the production or anything like that. I feel like it's missing a bit of texture, like a bit of character to the environment. I get it. Yeah.
He gets it whilst he's gritting his teeth because we know he loved it.
My number 1.
What's your number 8, Kris?
My number 8 is Conclave, a film that for 90% of it, I was having an absolute ball just watching veterans of thespian actors kind of bouncing off of each other. I think Ralph Fiennes is incredible in the film. And not to be very simple and like jump on the bandwagon, but it was initial gut feeling. I had no kind of knowledge of the discourse of this film going into it. The ending just kind of does come out of nowhere, and it never felt like the film was gearing towards that moment. I don't want to spoil it for anybody watching it because it is integral to your viewing experience. But yeah, it kind of felt, I don't know. I just didn't feel like this was where this movie was going. Wraps up a little bit too clean, and it kind of, I feel like there was another way to do it.
Yes, that was my feeling as well, and it's also my number 8. Yeah, I was thoroughly entertained throughout. There's no doubt about it. Ralph Fiennes is great. It's an interesting story, but yeah, the way it wraps up, it just feels like there was so much kind of gravitas been put on this whole conclave and this idea of them voting in the new pope, that the way that it kind of ends up happening just feels so much like, oh well, I guess we've got to wrap it up, and it's got to be on a nice note and a thoughtful note about kind of the future of the Catholic Church, I guess. But it just didn't fully ring true to me, so that was why it's slightly lower down on the list.
I like my conclave to be bitchy. Yeah.
It was very bitchy. So yeah, I mean, that's our 8s there. What about number 7? Max, do you want to start again?
I mean, I swear I didn't do this on purpose, but another music film is a complete unknown.
Oh, the third musical.
The third musical, yeah.
To me, it has more songs than Wicked.
This is when it's really good to do my favorite. I think for me, it's a great performance by Chalamet. I think it's just behind Call Me By Your Name for his best performance. And I kind of enjoy this kind of concealed journey about leading behind Thor, Electric, and where that heads the story and how that affects the people that he's built bonds with. But for me, I feel like, I mean, I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan fan, but I think for the person who kind of told who Bob Dylan is in real life, this kind of like revolutionary, I just find the film a bit ordinary. It's kind of like this bog standard biopic. And it's done really well, but I think I just want a little bit more out of my biopics. And I feel like especially the Elle Fanning relationship is kind of underplayed. But I think it wins me over by the end, but I think it's kind of, it could do a bit more.
Interesting. Yeah. I agree mostly. I think there maybe it is definitely slightly higher up on my list. So maybe I'll talk about it.
You watched it quite recently, Alex, didn't you?
Yeah, I did in preparation for this. Like, it wasn't a film that was on my radar.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to go see it. And you just told me, I went to see A Complete Unknown the other day.
Yeah, well, I was hoping it would come out on digital, so I could watch it at home before this episode. But then when I realized it was coming out late February on a digital release, I thought I've got to go out to the cinema and see it. And yeah, I must say I wasn't in the mood for a 2.5-hour Bob Dylan film, but I quite enjoyed it, and I don't have any complaints.
It's a very cozy cinema trip.
Yeah. I don't know much about Bob Dylan, or didn't, should I say? I didn't know much about Bob Dylan, so enlightened me from that aspect. But yeah, I thought it was quite scattershot. Didn't know what it wanted to focus on. So yeah, and then falls obviously into some of those trappings of a biopic. I thought Timothée Chalamet was great. I really like some of the stuff between him and, is it Jean or Joan?
Joan Baez,
yeah. I really liked that kind of dynamic that was going on there. But you're right, the Elle Fanning stuff, she kind of dips in and out of the film in a way that just doesn't really seem to serve as her so much. But anyway, but
I think Elle Fanning's doing some really great work. It's not her; it's the way the film uses her as the character.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's because Kojima needed her for Death Stranding 2. She can make it there.
Is that actually true?
No.
What's actually, so that's not my number 7. I should probably just say what my number 7 is now, since I'm talking anyway. So my number 7 is Emilia Perez. I feel like we've kicked that film enough, but I think that shows that I do like, because I like every film on this list. I do quite enjoy Emilia Perez, and I was thinking back to when I saw it, and I came out definitely mixed to positive. And I would say, like, since watching it, I've been a bit more mixed. But again, that's because of all this kind of discourse, and you're going, oh man, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is bad. But like, I don't want to be swayed too much. But I'll tell you what, if it wins Best Picture, I will definitely watch it again.
I think that ship has sailed now.
I think the ship might have sailed as well, but it could be a shocker. It could be a shocker.
If it was to win the Best Picture now, I think that would be the last Oscars.
I definitely think there would be some.
I mean, just to that point, like, I think the controversy is the controversy, but I kind of find it sad that no matter what you make of the film, it's kind of not her. It's not Carla Sofia Gascon's own campaign. She's destroyed it. She's destroyed the whole media thing in terms of Oscar potential. And I kind of find it sad that other people, whether you like the film or not, other people who were kind of a lock for an Oscar are now not going to get one because of someone else's.
I feel one person has managed to kind of be unscathed by it. I think that is Zoe. I think Zoe is still, for some reason, on a potential path.
Yeah, because she's in the supporting race as well, rather than Best Actress. So to be honest, and she won it like...
she's kind of swept at the moment. So.
Yeah, she's doing all right. But
I think it'll win song as well because it's kind of very weak.
It's got 2 songs in the category.
But,
it has a higher percentage chance. Kris, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is Wicked. I really was surprised by this because we talked about it to death on Air Max. Alex and I watched the trailer. It was on the cinema every time we went to the cinema. Everybody saw it. I thought this kind of looks like dog shit. Like, it kind of looks like exactly what you said. It looks a bit icky. It looks shiny and sun-bleached and everything. And I was like, okay. But I was really surprised. I thought it moved quite well. Despite some of the ugliness, I think John Chu has a pretty deft-handed directing choreography. And I think he finds some interesting ways to tell songs that I've seen the stage show where people usually just stand in the middle of the stage and they don't know what to do with them. He finds some sort of creative way to use environment, to use his really talented actors to kind of tell the story. And for me, it zipped past really quickly. It warranted its runtime. We'll see what happens in part 2 because part 2 of that show is notoriously a bit of a bummer. And there's not really any toe-tapping songs in part 2. So we'll be interested to see how they deal with the gravitas. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, like, I'm kind of looking forward to watching it again someday. Some sunny Sunday where I'm just sitting and I'm sleepy and hungover, I'll just put on Wicked. I agree with you, though. The worst people to go to the cinema with are the audience of Wicked. I just don't think these people ever went to the cinema before. There was a gaggle of teenage girls in front of me who were recording the movie on their phone.
I saw loads of people on Twitter like filming it. I'm like, what is this? And then you see people like comment like going like, why are you doing that? How dare you do that? And they kind of kick off about it going, oh, this is our experience. I'm like, what nonsense.
There's no point. There's no point. Don't worry. We'll go see I'm Still Here, and I guarantee they won't be there, and I'll be happy. The girl with the needle, the teenage girls are all there. They all pull their phones out, and like, I said to Lauren, I was like 10 minutes in, I was like, I'm here for the next 2.5 hours. I'm moving. So moved, enjoyed the hell out of the rest of the experience. But yeah, that's it. It's fun. Like, yeah, it's not art. but it's better than it could have been. I think it's the best version of this movie it could have been. So I had fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad you like it, Kris.
Nice things to say.
No, I'm surprised it says slow down because I know you are a big fan, but I think maybe that goes to show how it's a pretty strong list of films, I would say, this year. And though many would say apart from Emilia Perez. But we'll move on from the Emilia Perez stuff. So what are we on now? We're on number 6. Yeah, Max, do you want to go ahead again there?
Yeah, so I got this film slightly higher than both of you. I got Conclave in at 6.
Gotcha.
I just really enjoyed this film. It's kind of tense, gripping, thrilling in all the right ways. I kind of enjoyed how the film portrayed the Vatican as well, which I went to this summer. So I think that context kind of helped.
Okay.
So it's when you see something that you've just recently been to on the screen, you kind of had that added context to it. And just the fact that they kind of built the whole of the Vatican from scratch because they weren't allowed to film there. I find a really brilliant piece of production design. Like you've both said, I think the performances are great, and I think it has a really great score. And I'd love this to win.
Yeah,
I think the score actually is the kind of driver of the film. I think that's why it moves so brilliantly. I would agree with you that I found the ending very anticlimactic and sudden. But I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know whether that's kind of where the book kind of lands. But I think, it definitely was kind of underwhelming. But I think for me, I could kind of separate that from the rest of the film.
It does feel like it might be a fun book to read with all the kind of, lots of back and forth and plotting and,
because it has a reputation of being like an airport book. But I thought it was a little bit more suave than that when I watched it. So I'll be interested too.
There was no Da Vinci Code.
Oh no, it wasn't just it wasn't just Tom Hanks pointing at things for 3 hours. Yeah.
My number 6 was actually A Complete Unknown. Is it your number 6 as well, Kris?
Yeah. Might as well join in the conversation here.
I was thinking where it might land on your list, only because I know what you like and you don't like, I guess, more than most people do, having done this for a few years.
It wins among the musicals.
Yeah, I thought I would out you there with A Complete Unknown, so we can just quickly chat about it a bit more. But yeah, you are a big Bob Dylan fan, though, right?
Yeah, he was my first big sort of music artist love. When I was a teenager, I was moody and I locked myself in my bedroom and I listened to Bob Dylan, and my mom probably was driving herself mad. But yeah, I just really connected with his music. It's such a dense library. For me, before, just to put my 2 cents into it, he is such an enigmatic person that I actually was quite impressed of Mangold's restraint not to try to dissect who the person Bob Dylan was, because I don't think a fan would be interested in that movie, because the whole kind of point of it is this sort of like, why this person? Why did these amazing songs, these amazing pieces of literature come to this one human being? He slurs in interviews and is quite and the movie's not afraid to portray him as an asshole. And I like it. I think the movie's got the sort of storybook quality without it being too cute at times, and it's just kind of fun to sit around, hang out with these characters, similar to the Don't Look Back documentary, where you're just chilling with Dylan. Good rhyme, right? You're just hanging out with Bob Dylan. I love Joan Baez. I'm a big Joan Baez fan too, so to see Barbero play her brilliantly in the film too was awesome. So yeah, you're just watching people kind of fall into these characters who shouldn't be played in cinema, but they manage to get away with it. And I think Mangold learned from some of his mistakes in the past, and I think he manages to avoid pitfalls mostly in the biopic genre. So yeah, this movie's just fun, just to sit around and for 2.5 hours. It's perhaps forgettable in the long run, but I had a really good time with it, and I think the songs are done really well. It's a handsome movie.
For me, it was like a nice introduction to Bob Dylan as somebody who is aware of like a few of the hits but doesn't really know much about him other than him being this kind of, we've all seen the photos. I know the iconography of Bob Dylan. So getting to see how that plays out within his kind of story, how real it is, I don't know. But it was a nice introduction and kind of, nice to hear the music on the big screen, nice and loud. And I'll keep saying it. Timothy Chalamet is great. I thought Edward Norton was fantastic as well.
Yeah, you want to give him a big cuddle the whole movie, don't you?
You do. Is he up for Best Supporting Actor in that role? Well, I really liked him. I can't remember who else he's up against.
Actually, no, they said Edward Norton's forehead is up for Best Supporting Actor.
He really does sell that. He really does. I like it. I like A Complete Unknown. But yeah, not. Have you guys
seen the other? Have you seen I'm Not There, which is Todd Haynes' Dylan biopic
with Kate? I've never. Yeah, Kate Blanchett and various
there's
actors.
Like 7 people playing different personalities of Dylan.
No, I've heard Kate Blanchett's incredible.
It's really good. Because I think when you talked about kind of not wanting to go in the like complex headspace of Dylan, I think that's kind of a film that I kind of think, because it's kind of looking at all 8, I think it's 8 or 7 different personalities of Dylan. It's kind of an interesting take on it.
Well, the guy had like, even up to now, he's still creating music. I think he's got like something like 50 albums in his discography. And like, if you just go on Wikipedia and go through every album, like you can see the transitioning, like every 5 years, this person just completely transforms himself, always adapting. So that makes sense. Yeah.
The question is, are we getting a sequel?
Completely known? I don't know. Whatever.
now known? Brilliant. On to our number 5s. Max, do you want to go ahead?
I think this one might be a bit unpopular, but I've got Dune Part 2 in at number 5. I mean, it was a lot lower on the list, but I watched it yesterday, and it was lower, but I bumped it up yesterday when I rewatched it. I think I kind of forgot how great the visuals were and how stunning the film is to look at. And I haven't read the book, but I understand it's quite a hard book to adapt. So it's kind of impressive how well the film moves. And I think that we've kind of lost that, like, the Austin Butler stuff is kind of magnificent. That kind of gladiator fight is kind of the best bit of the film, I think. I think where the film is let down for me is the relationship between Paul and Chani. I think that's where the film because it's so long, it kind of can't afford runtime to go into that. And I think as a lover of like rom-coms and relationships in film, I think that's kind of the bit of the film where I was most drawn to.
Sure.
And it's kind of the bit where it's most underdeveloped. And I think it's got a great, Hans Zimmer wrote a great love theme for that relationship. I think it feels underutilized to me.
Yeah, that scene of just them looking out of the sand dunes and it looks like big water flowing.
Yeah, and there's that scene where they're kind of like doing that walking too.
Yes.
And I feel like that kind of just ends, and I kind of wanted more of that scene.
Yeah, you get like a montage of them together for a minute. And that's not me shitting on it, because I kind of like the montage. I feel like we don't get a lot of those kind of like, we're just going to speed through the love bit montage. It feels like something very 90s about that. But I
think as well that relationship would be beneficial to the final story, because I think when the turn comes right at the end and Chani feels kind of betrayed by Paul, I think that would help by kind of building the romance earlier in the film.
Yeah.
And then finally, another unpopular opinion, but I think Chalamet's kind of overacting in the film.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like the big moments where he's kind of like raising his voice just don't work for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's interesting.
That's my unpopular take.
That is very unpopular, because I completely disagree. But then only because I've gone on record before, but I find Timothy Chalamet like really intimidating in those scenes, and you think he's a skinny little thing. He's not intimidating, but in that scene where he's talking in the cave with thousands of people around him, and all of it. He's just had the worm blood. He's just drank it, and he just like fully
piss.
Piss. That's it. He fully comes into his own. That was the moment where I was like, oh man, like he's really good. But that fair enough. If it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you. But yeah, I had to stick up for my own views there. But yeah, no, interesting. Dune Part 2 at number 5. If you'd voted it lower, would it have come before Emilia Perez?
Yeah, I think I had it. So yesterday, before I rewatched the film, I had it between Wicked and A Complete Unknown.
There you go.
So
yeah, there you go. I wonder what would be more hated, ranking Wicked below Emilia Perez like I did, or if anybody was to rank Dune Part 2 below Emilia Perez. What do you think? Who's going to get the most hate there?
I think they feed you straight to the sandworm. Yeah.
I think between like the film like cinephile community, probably Dune being less popular would be a hotter take. But I think if you talk to the general public, I think Wicked's like their film.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Amanda Holden called it like the film of the decade or something ridiculous.
Well, she would.
Oh, yeah. I was really annoyed as well because I was like, oh, what? Because they were slapping it on all the posters and everything. I was like, what? Like,
hey, no man Holden hate on this podcast.
Yeah, I guess every time there's a musical that's released by Universal, I guess that's her favorite film, right?
Is that just built into her contract?
Because I'm pretty sure she said that on the radio, and I like listened to it, and I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, how much she's been paid to say that?
I don't think she is.
But no, she's just like, if you watch her in Britain's Got Talent, she's like full of hyperbole, isn't she?
Oh yeah, I'm a victim of that behavior too.
You and Amanda Holden love all the same films, it seems, Kris.
Me, Amanda Holden, Donald Trump.
I must say, I don't want this to be the Kick Wicked.
Yeah, please don't. I was really nice about this.
I am surprised it's on the list. Maybe more surprised than Emilia Perez, but I don't know. I'm just surprised it got nominated.
Like, to be fair, man, I mean, like, I'm surprised too, but I'm kind of like, all power to it, I suppose. If this brings people to kind of think the Oscars is less snooty and bring more people to it, I don't know. It's the Oscars, man.
Oscars. It's always confusing. What's your number 5, Kris?
My number 5, and I think this is going to disappoint Alex, but I don't want him to be disappointed here because this got hard from here onwards, and it is Nickel Boys. A film I absolutely loved, but I think it's one of those movies I don't think you can really declare your love so unconditionally for it on a first viewing, is because it's so visually dense, and it's such a great exercise of restraint and perspective, and much smaller and more granular detail than I was expecting it to be, which I really like. Like, for me, the moments of the film that really stuck with me was the tinsel falling from the Christmas tree, the girl underneath the seat, the bus, and the seat in the bus. All these little moments that you kind of feel like when you look back and recollect your own memories as a child or as a teenager, that it's not always the big things. It's usually these small little details, these moments of touching a texture or a smell in the air. And I think that's what Nickel Boys just really captures so perfectly. And the story is obviously quite restrained in terms of it doesn't over sensationalize the brutality of these horrible ordeals that these guys had to face back in this institution. But I think one or two more viewings, I will love this film. But it's just got so much going on. I just want to feel those textures a little bit more. I want to just revisit it.
I think that's fair, because I do want to see it again. And I read the book straight afterwards as well, just because I was kind of in love with the film, which you'll find out later, because it's much higher on my list. So I don't want to say too much. But yeah, I think, actually, I don't want to talk about Nickel Boys until I get to have a say.
Well, I do. God damn it.
But my number 5 might disappoint you slightly, even though, again, I really enjoyed it. My number 5 is The Brutalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was positive, but I had my kind of trepidations about it. But I think the podcast episode we did, which was like 2 weeks ago now,
sure.
2-3 weeks ago, where we reviewed it and we really went into depth with it. I think that was one of my favorite kind of conversations that we've had about a film, because I came out of that conversation like more like positive on the film as a whole, as an experience. And it's a very long film, 3.5 hours with the intermission. And I think having come out of the film by myself, nobody to talk to about it until like a few days later when we did the recording, I think I slightly soured on the ending of it, because that was the final parts of the film, and it was the part of the film that I really didn't like. So yeah, being able to talk about the whole experience just gave me just made the whole experience more enjoyable for me. And it is a fantastic film. But yeah, I think my top 4 are all films that, like, as I was watching them, I was aware that I loved them all. So yeah, Brutalist might get better with time, but for now it is number 5 on my list. But it is fantastic.
I will withhold Max. I don't know. I'm going to withhold comment until later.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot higher up.
Yes. I've got the most controversial list. Emilia Perez is not at the bottom.
The thing is, though, like, it just shows how great this slate of films is that we're kind of like,
for sure, yeah,
it's so interchangeable, really.
Yeah. I know some people have been a little bit upset that there isn't like a strong, like, that's the one that's going to win this year. But I quite like the fact that it's a little bit more up in the air. But I have an idea as to who might get it. But like, from my own personal feeling,
it's definitely the most interesting race in terms of the not knowing who's winning.
Yeah, and it's the most like Conclave in terms of so many different things coming out about different films, so much controversy around, you know.
I forget he did it, but I saw a tweet about it where someone was comparing like who each Best Picture nominee was in Conclave. So
I can imagine which one Emilia Perez was. It was probably the fascist.
I forget. Yeah, so Emilia Perez was Tedesco, and then Conclave was, I forget. And then it was like The Brutalist was Stanley Tucci's character, which was like the one that should be winning, but then somehow it's not picking up anything. And then
Did you see? I sent it to Alex. I found it on Reddit. The meme of the burn book from Mean Girls, and Ralph Fiennes from Conclave was holding the burn book, and it had shit on every film in the Oscar category. It was pretty. It's worth finding. You haven't seen it.
It's been a dirty Oscars race. It has been.
It has been dirty.
Is that everybody's? Is that everybody's number 5 now?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Should we go number 4s then? Max, go ahead.
Heavy hitters.
So if I was including I'm Still Here, this is where it would be. But it's very close between this, I'm Still Here, and Nickel Boys, which have got slightly higher. I feel like they're quite similar films in kind of hitting capital I important stories. I think for me, where Nickel Boys separates herself is through that visual style. And I just love that first person POV perspective, which I think is possibly one of the biggest innovations in filmmaking that we've seen in the years. And it kind of baffles me that this hasn't got cinematography, directing nominations. It's kind of
because it's
completely
totally stunning.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I think the bit that I've kind of cling on to most of that kind of opening 5 minutes, where it's just about experience, and it's like shots of him in the bath, shots of oranges, wind rushing. I think that's just like such a beautiful scene of kind of like experienced life through someone else's eyes, and it's kind of so innocent, which is kind of interesting when you come back into it from watching the rest of the film.
Yeah, you get a lot of it's almost like fragments of memories.
Yeah,
like what makes up Elwood's psyche and his person. And in the book, even though the book is actually really short, you do get a little bit more kind of before the reform school with Elwood and getting to know his life. So there's fragments of that montage, if I remember rightly, comes directly from the book, but other parts of it are just to kind of like build up who this guy is. But yeah, it took me a minute to get on board with it. I won't lie. But
only that scene was like I was like locked in. I think
Yeah.
But that's just my kind of filmmaking, I think. And then the other scene that kind of like I cling on to is that scene where I can't remember exactly because I only saw it once back in October, November time, but it's the moment where he's been taken to a room where him and 2 or 3 others are about to get punished. And it doesn't show them getting punished, but it shows him waiting in the room. And I thought that was just like a brilliant scene of creating tension by not showing something.
Yes, yeah, and then it cuts to almost like documentary footage of kind of historical records.
What I think it does in that institution is that like it's not about the beat. You know, we could easily any other film, like if this was some sort of like other sort of historical, institution sort of film, that they would cut to the beatings and they would make it all about that. But it's all about the smell and the texture. Like going back to that thing about texture of that space, the stench of ill will and death in that room, in that setting. So it's more picking up on the walls and the lights, and it's all planting you there in that moment, as opposed to just going for the easy, hard hitting blow.
Yeah, like something like 12 Years a Slave would just show you the violence and you're supposed to be shocked by that, which obviously you are. But in this case, it's almost as if like you're almost put into the eyes of other pupils in terms of they know what happens down there, but some of them haven't experienced it, but it's scary nonetheless. Like we all know what happens and it's not nice.
Yeah, I mean, like not seeing it is scarier than seeing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not that that comes across wrong because it's like, oh, is this supposed to like excite me that I'm experiencing something horrible? No, it's just more effective in putting you into the shoes of these characters.
Mm.
A lot of shoes in this movie too. I love all the shots of shoes.
Yeah. Well, I guess you look down a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption said, "When do you look at another man's shoes?" And at that point, I was like, "Yeah, you're right. When do I look at another man's shoes?"
What is your number 4, Kris?
My number 4 is The Substance, a film that I love the hell out of. I saw it with my girlfriend. I think she loves it even more. She'd probably put it, number 3 or 2 on this list. Yeah, I mean, I love Cronenbergian horror. I'm just going to say the things everybody else has said because this movie is sort of about surface pleasures of ickiness, but it's also, obviously a great obvious allegory at the same time. Demi Moore is amazing. Even down to the icky, yucky Dennis Quaid chewing on langoustines or whatever he's eating. This movie's just great. It scratched that itch that something like Maxine, in the film I was really excited for last year, kind of let me down on. And I was like, I feel like a lot of horror movies, although are pretty good, have lost their teeth a little bit. And it was great to be reminded. It's the second female French director in a couple of years that's kind of reminded me that, yeah, these sorts of films need to be nasty and yucky. And it was a great time in the cinema.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also my number 4. Just like what an experience going to see that film. Like I had high hopes for it. Like I thought it looked good, but I don't think I was fully ready for just like how much fun I was going to have at the cinema, because it is its own unique vibe. It has this message that it wants to portray, and you could say it was relatively heavy-handed with it, maybe. But the film is heavy-handed in every aspect. Like music, cinematography, gore, and yeah, I just thought it was fantastic. Demi Moore was brilliant in it. Margaret Qualley as well, just really kind of portraying that other side. And yeah, it goes to some crazy places. I think maybe it indulges in itself a little bit too much near the end. But I can't deny that it was a fantastic experience. And I'm just happy to see it nominated, to be honest with you. And it looks like it's going to win potentially for Demi Moore in Best Actress. And you know what? We never see horror films get nominated for Oscars. And I know it's got a little bit more artiness behind it, but it's still a genre piece. So
that's what I'm happy about these Oscars in general is just the genre representation, and we want to see more of it. A film we're going to be talking about in a minute. No one's talked about it yet. Leans into another genre pretty heavily too. So
yeah. Do you think because there doesn't seem to be a lot of hate for The Substance, and because of the way it's ranked, do you think it has a chance?
I'm going to say no.
Well, looks like we've all got it relatively middle, potentially high there. We don't know with yourself, Max, but yeah.
I think in terms of that, I think if it was going to, I think you would have had to see it come up with a DGA winner, something like that, where it is also that system.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I don't think it will, but I kind of wish they'd list first attempt. I think it would be a lot higher than people are predicting.
Yeah,
if I had to go over 100.
I can't remember which podcast it was, but somebody was advocating that we should be able to see what the voters vote for in everything, and they reckon that would potentially skew. people might vote differently knowing that they're being watched, essentially.
It's crazy, man. I mean, how many of these voters watch all the films? And
I think that's where The Brutalist will probably not win because of that, because it's so long.
Was there some sort of there was a lot of insider reports of people talking to a lot of voters privately and leaking that dude, I would never watch that movie, or a lot of it was that's what happens, unfortunately.
I've heard a lot of people haven't made it to the second half either, because I remember hearing murmurs that Felicity Jones might not get nominated because of that, because she only turned up in the second half. So
she wasn't in the movie.
The film might win if they haven't seen the second half.
Yeah. Oh no! Hard disagree. Well, we'll get into that. Hard disagree.
I'm kidding, Kris. I'm kidding.
Oh, we like confrontation from time to time on the show, Max. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to call me a motherfucker or anything. It's completely allowed.
Number three. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So I've got The Substance here.
There we go.
But I think all of these three films are kind of very, very close to me. I kind of find it interesting because I think when you look back on a year in film, there's the films that come up are kind of different to the ones that kind of show up in your top 10 lists. I think something like Get Out, for example, I think wasn't necessarily on people's radar, but now we look at that film as kind of the film of that year. And I feel like The Substance is the film of this year. I think especially the opening 20 minutes is some of the best filmmaking of the year. This is, especially when I saw it, I think, because I hadn't seen Nickelboys or The Brutalist or Anora before then. But I was just kind of overawed by the kind of visual feast that is the first half an hour, from this Hollywood star to the prawn eating, to the bathroom scene where Dennis Quaid comes in and does mush his hand, things like that.
Yeah, and his teeth. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that I was immediately on board with the film. And I think even because we kind of talked about the genre with The Substance, but I think what worked for me is that it's horror with a meaning. So I think whenever I come back to the film, the scene I think of is the scene where Demi Moore is looking in the mirror about to go on a date, and she can't decide what to wear. And I think that's the crux of the film. I think that's why it works so well. And I think that's why it's getting so much love.
Well, yeah. I mean, hard agree. I've picked out that scene a couple of times on the show. That is also, for me, the scariest scene in the movie, because I think it's boring because I've said it before, but it's so relatable. I think we've all been there, right? We've all been in that moment of crisis where we're just shaking our hair because it can't get her set right, or there's it's just that complete crisis where we're looking at ourselves in such a monstrous way that's unrealistic to other people, and it's almost irredeemable in the moment. And watching it's quite painful, right?
It's really sad as well, that scene.
Yeah.
Interesting as well, you said that it was the film that people remember from this year. I think the substance is for Mubi what Saltburn is for Amazon Prime, where it brought everybody to that streaming channel for a film that I think, critics and general audiences can be shocked and, enjoy it all at the same time. And just hilarious as well. I think it was Universal that originally had it. And because the director refused to kind of back down on some of the stuff that she wanted to do, they said, fine, but you have to, we're not distributing it anymore. I think it was picked up by one other studio and then dropped again and then ended up in Mubi's hands. And now look at it, Oscar nominee with potential some wins, which is must be a good feeling and a big fuck you to the studios.
Love it.
Number three. Kris, you haven't done your number 3.
Okay. Listen, Al Gaib, Muad'Dib, Uzul, all of them. So Dune Part 2 is my number 3. I actually had a bit of an inner dialogue with myself yesterday when I was making the list. I was like, fuck, is Dune Part 2 like my number 1 movie of last year? Because I saw it 3 times in IMAX. I was just kind of like addicted to that feeling I had when I watched it. Like, it was so beautiful. And it was less of a viewing experience, more of like an all body experience where you just kind of felt the movie pass through you. Just watching something that was so monolithic and grandiose, but restrained. And that's Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker. And I kind of settled back on a little bit because I do think there are 2 movies I just absolutely love, with a capital L. But Dune Part 1. I read the book a couple of years ago in anticipation for Part 1. And I was always like, how the fuck is this guy going to do this? Because obviously we know the David Lynch version, and that's kind of like some people love it, but it's a hard sit. So when you're reading the book and you're halfway through chapter 1 and they're throwing words at you like Gom Jabbar and Kwisatz Haderach and Bene Gesserit, and you're like, with no context or background, and you're living in the glossary for half of the book. And so the fact that he even managed to got out all the stuff that's silly and doesn't translate to screen, and just make this world actually kind of feel lived in and real, and provide enough restraint. And that's what I kind of like about Denis as much as I do, is that he is a filmmaker about grandiose but restraint. I always want, like you were saying, Max, about the Chani thing. I get that, but for me that was a little bit of a strength for the film, where I just always feel like, I just want a little bit more. I want a little bit more of the music. I want a little bit more of I want a little bit more of everything. But he's right. I don't need more. I need to know less, and I need to be looking up in the sky away from Arrakis. I'm wondering what the hell is going on up there. And I don't need to know the prequel Star Wars politics about it, because Star Wars prequels did it for me. So yeah, I love it. I think it's 20 years time, it's still going to look as amazing as it does. And I got it on Blu-ray, but I'm scared to ever watch it because I'll never get that IMAX experience back. So maybe that's why it's number 3. Yeah,
interesting. Because my number 3 is what I thought your number 3 was going to be, which means that potentially it's moved higher up in your mind. But yeah, I mean, does anybody want to say anything more about Dune Part 2 before I jump onto my number 3? It's going to come up later for me.
Oh, okay. Well, no, well, yeah. Well, yeah. I feel like I let my heart bleed enough there. So.
You did.
Talk about Amanda Holden or hyperbole, right?
You wait until it comes up on my list.
Wait to be Amanda Holden stands. Listen to the podcast.
Yeah, hopefully we found a whole new one.
Yeah.
Viking listeners, yeah.
Brilliant. Maybe Amanda Holden will listen.
They better be getting some royalties at the stands.
If you lose a follower, Max, it's Amanda Holden. And if I gain a follower, it's Amanda Holden.
Oh, Jesus, man.
Yeah, my number 3 is Anora. I think I've spoken about this film quite a few times on the podcast now, so I won't go into it too much, but yeah, just a fantastic experience of watching this in the cinema at the London Film Festival. Wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. It is obviously, as most people should probably be aware now, it's a film of 2 halves. This kind of glossy sex worker with a Russian son of a Russian oligarch relationship. It's all very kind of fantastical and whirlwind, and you're swept up in it, and then kind of reality comes crashing down on the two of them. But it's also like a comedy of errors. It feels kind of old school Hollywood in a way, and it's just so much fun, and it looks great and it sounds great. And I think, you know, if Demi Moore doesn't win for The Substance, then it should be Mighty Madison. I think she is, you know, star in the making in this role. And yeah, she's just fantastic. So yeah, I love Anora. I think it's brilliant. I think it probably will win Best Picture, but we'll talk about that later. But I think it probably will, because I think it's going to be in this area for most people. And because it's the first time I've mentioned it, means that it must be high up on your guys' list as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want to go into your number twos?
Sure, let's go for it. Max, kick us off.
So I've got The Brutalist in number 2.
Yep.
I think it's kind of mad that this film was made for $10 million. But it's just like it's kind of gargantuan, like seismic journey about the American dream. Sure. I think Adrian Brody's giving one of the best performances of the decade, probably his best performance. I think it's probably the best directed film of the year. And I mean, everyone talks about the second half being more hefty and draining, but I think it's kind of purposely so. And I think although the second half does drag, I think it's important that it does drag, because it's kind of this unwinding of this kind of fantasy of the American dream. And then the final thing I think is to talk about the epilogue. I think that's kind of another controversial thing, but I think for me it's kind of where everything comes together, and you see how his whole way of building the community center is kind of about his struggle through the Holocaust, where the dimensions of it are the same as the camp he's in, but the ceiling's higher to bring light, and that kind of like stunned me a bit.
Wow. Where do you start with The Brutalist? I don't
know. Is it your number 2?
No, it's my. Well,
I guess so.
Yeah, do the math.
I only wanted to say in case you could keep adding to it, but that's fine. I'll let you talk about The Brutalist in a second if you want.
Well, yeah, because then we can just do like Max can join in, and we can do a big roundup about The Brutalist, right?
Yeah, sure.
My number 2 is Anora.
Yeah.
I love from the opening scene of a remix of Take That's Greatest Day. Sean Baker really knows how to set the tone for his films at the very beginning, and the center of it is Mikey Madison, who really is like the anchor of the film. Like, she completely embodies the tone of the film that Sean Baker. She's a really kind of rough and ready sex worker, but she's also she's got this sort of like youthful naivety that's really endearing about her, but also being quite streetwise at the same time. So it's these two kind of different personalities that kind of it takes to survive in a sort of position that she's in. But as Alex said, I wasn't really ready for the second half being this sort of like Peter Sellers Pink Panther movie with fumbling morons and just escalation upon escalation. I felt like we were on a 10-minute rendezvous in the film, and the rendezvous just got longer and longer and longer and became the rest of the film. So yeah, I think it's visually stunning. I just absolutely love the glitziness of the film, its humor. And then that sucker punch of an ending that I know didn't work for everybody, but for the people it worked for, myself included, it really, really did. And it's crazy like how much a movie, even though it tonally shifts so much and you've been laughing at it for about the last 45 minutes, it's earned your love so much, and and it surprises you by the end. And I think Sean Baker is definitely one of the greatest filmmakers currently working today. And whatever he makes now, I'm going to be there.
I'm trying to remember your top 10 list of the year.
Oh no, I'm being contrarian. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like things have moved quite a lot, right? In terms of your feelings on things.
100%. I've grown a lot as a person. I've gone into transcendental meditation in the last 3 weeks, actually. So it ultimately makes me a better person than everybody on this podcast. No, but it's I said on the time on the ranking on that episode that like I wasn't sure at that time. Cool. And I think it's right. We've been saying it this whole episode tonight. These are all mostly very strong films.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm landing today.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Your opinion, as always, is
most important. Yes.
No. I was going to say least important because you hold the least qualifications in film out of the three of us right now.
Oh, I've got soul.
My number 2 is Nickel Boys, which again it still surprises me because I think it took me about 40 minutes to get on board with this film, but it was my like 4th film in a day, and I was very, very tired. But I just can't stop thinking about this film, and now having read the book, I realized what a fantastic adaptation of that story it is as well. I can't wait to watch it again. We've mentioned the POV stuff already. You can tell Ramel Ross, the director, has come from that documentary world. He just knows how to frame a shot. Just everything about it is so beautiful. It really captures real life. And then, obviously, when the story truly kicks in, the kind of dark realities that these characters have to kind of face. Yeah, just really emotionally impacted by it, and a film probably more than any film on this list that really stayed with me for a long period of time. I can't wait to watch it again. And I didn't get a chance to go watch it when it officially released in the cinemas. But yeah, I'm waiting for it to either come to digital or onto Blu-ray because I just, can't wait to watch it again. Just, fantastic film. And for me, just left a very long lasting impression, which is why it's my number 2. So,
yeah, it definitely does. I love to see it. I'm glad that somebody has it this high up on the list because I think it really deserves it. And like I said, I think another viewing, I'm probably going to be rejigging this order again because it's one of those films that just demands further inspection. And most of the images that I talked about earlier and Max talked about are the kind of more everlasting images of the last year in film for me, because they felt so real and personal. And that's the film, isn't it? It's the most personal film on this list, for sure.
I must say, when I watched it, I thought, I've just seen the front runner for the best picture. I honestly thought this was, because it was releasing late, I thought this was going to be the one that would sweep everybody up and be like, this is the obvious choice. Why do you think that isn't the case with Nickel Boys? Why do you think it hasn't really had much momentum in this Oscar race, other than being nominated, of course?
I think for me is kind of, we've already discussed it, but it's kind of the subtlety in how it approaches its subject matter, because it doesn't bash you over the head with going, this is the bad stuff that's going on, Nickel. It's kind of very innocent. It's maybe the wrong word, but it's kind of not maximalist in its approach. It kind of doesn't say, look at me, look how terrible the things that are happening on screen are. And I think that's probably to the detriment of its Oscar chances.
I think you're right, Max, actually. I think there will be some people who will be disappointed in this film for that reason, but I'm glad that it's not appealing to that type of person. I think you leave the film going like, right, I don't have an entire geography of this institution and all of its mechanics in my head, but I can guess, like I understand the picture here, and the movie's more concerned about giving these boys like their due diligence and their honorability and dignity back. So yeah,
I wonder as well whether it's just the unconventional nature of its style is just too much for some people, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like a gimmick, doesn't it? And I definitely thought that when I read that it was going to be like that. I don't think it is when you watch the film, but yeah, some people might have. Some people might feel like you need to look, deep into the eyes of a character to truly kind of emotionally connect with them, and maybe that's something that was lacking there. But
it's not the first film to like obviously use the technique, but I do think it's the first one that makes it, beyond a gimmick. It does, it never feels that way throughout.
It plays with the rules of it as well, doesn't it? In terms of you go third person a few times, and I think definitely in the kind of final sequences, I think it even moves away from it a couple of times.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, number ones.
Ooh, big boys.
So I've got Anora in number one. I think for me, before this film, I was never a huge Sean Baker fan. I kind of was always like, yeah, his films are good, but I kind of wasn't on the wavelength of a lot of people. But kind of everything clicked with Anora for me. I think from that needle drop that we've already talked about, it's kind of like such a bizarre choice, but it works so well. And like I was listening to that version of the song weeks after the film release, but I kind of love how it's this kind of fairy tale story that kind of it kind of pairs well with The Brutalist, to be fair, because it's kind of about the American dream as well, and how Annie's this figure that kind of suddenly has everything she's ever wanted, and then suddenly to see that it's all come tumbling back down, which I don't think romance films do enough. Mm-hmm. I kind of love how we kind of talked about the comedy of it, and it's kind of funny, but you're not sure whether you're supposed to laugh with it or whether you're not supposed to laugh. And also I love the look of the film. Looking into seasons now on my PhD, it's such a winter film, and I'm looking forward to talking about it more, because it kind of starts off at this like Christmas, New Year's period where it's kind of all bubbly and exciting, and it's this kind of idea of a new beginning and a new life. But when the kind of turn in the second, in the midpoint comes, it suddenly becomes frosty and isolating, and we have these shots of them walking past fairgrounds where the frame is so high, it doesn't feel like New York. It kind of feels like somewhere really remote. And I think that kind of adds to the coldness of winter. And then finally the ending just kind of like brings everything together and destroyed me, which I find it's kind of like, I love how complicated it is. It's kind of her taking agency again, but is she taking agency or is she returning to her past? Or is that why she can't do it? It's kind of this dynamic, which I find really interesting. And then obviously there's the snow that kind of covers the windows, which I find really interesting as well, and kind of gives this moment privacy. Yeah. And then I love how the film just ends and all that you're left with is the windscreen wipers. And it's kind of a silly, like a small point, but I think it really adds to the numbness that you get from the ending.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's very beautifully put.
I love hearing people talk about the ending, because that was my kind of, most of my conflict when I first saw the film came from that. And I loved it. And it was just that ending I wasn't sure about.
See, to me, the film wouldn't work as well if it didn't have the ending.
Do you know what? I do agree now.
Gut punch.
Yeah, I do agree now after hearing yourself, after hearing Kris. I think the Cineboys the Cineboys to Cinemen podcast had a very good kind of deep dive into it, and they went into the ending a lot. And after hearing everybody's opinions on it, I'm like, I think I do really like the ending, actually. But it took me a minute to kind of understand it, I guess, in a way.
I think you're right, Max. I don't think we'd be talking about it right now if it wasn't for that ending. I don't think it might not even be on the list, actually.
I think it's gonna win. I think it's gonna win.
Oh, I think it's like 80%. Yeah.
Kris, what's your number one?
My number one is not that 80% though. It is The Brutalist. Obviously, Alex and I alluded to, we spent over an hour talking about it on a previous episode. This film really overwhelmed me. Dune overwhelmed the senses. This overwhelmed my senses, but also kind of overwhelmed my soul a little bit while watching it. I think it has not just one of the strongest opening scenes of the last year, but I think that scene is just like an all-timer for me. That arrival in New York in the immigration ship and with with Felicity Jones' voiceover in the background, just these two sort of conflicting past and prospect of future kind of fighting against each other, married with that incredible score, that 4-bar brass beat at the kind of, you have to see it in the cinema, this film. I really do think so. I think it passes through you. I got chills in the back of my neck. I think, Alex, you were the same when you heard that. Seeing the Statue of Liberty upside down, just knowing in my fiber what this film was going to be about, and that it was going to be about struggles and tribulations and inequalities and uphill battles. And so the performances by Brody Jones and Guy Pearce are just, I think they're all just incredible. I especially Brody. This film is just sort of like an overwhelming experience where, like you said, $9.9 million to make this movie. Forget the discourse. I know we're all about discourses tonight. Emilia Perez has its fair few. The Brutalist has its couple. I can forgive. I really am not interested in the Brutalist's case because I think that its merits far exceed any sort of like loud noise that's in the background of this film, because I think it's absolutely a marvel of economy, which kind of marries with the story a little bit too. It kind of marries with the struggle of Laszlo Toth and his trials and tribulations of trying to get this piece of beauty, this internal struggle out of him and manifest it as a big structure. The film is just the same thing. But beyond that, even without the context, watching this movie in the cinema is kind of like witnessing a modern classic. You know, it's a feeling of watching like The Godfather for the first time and watching an in-depth emotional epic that's nearly 3.5 hours in this instance. And I don't necessarily agree that the second half is its weak point. I agree with you, Max, that kind of that downward spiral into darkness is kind of what the film needs. Epilogue, yeah, I get people's complaints of it, but it's such a small part. And there's one or two small niggly things that go on in this film that are so minuscule in comparison with the scope of everything else that's going on, that the full meal is just enough. Like the full meal is just enough to overcome any shortcomings that it has. For me, it had very little. So yeah. I mean, very little bad to say, but I'm really excited to see it again. Just remember that intermission being inbuilt into the film, and it felt so structurally integral to the experience. And feeling that energy in the room, that everybody was just so excited to go back in and collectively experience the rest of this story. Yeah, it's an incredible film.
I just had a few more things.
Absolutely.
So kind of like with the AI stuff that the film's kind of been marred with, I'd say, is I've always thought of it as if we get this film for $10 million and it's whether we get this film with the AI problems in inverted commas, because I'm not really sure they are problems. But anyway, if we get this film or we don't, I think I'd much rather have this film, and I think it's kind of a necessary evil. And it's important. It's great that we can get these films made despite the backlash, I guess. And then finally with the score, I think you made a great point. And I think every time I've been to cinema since seeing The Brutalist, every time I hear that score now, I kind of want to poke my head into. I'm like, I want to go back to see The Brutalist. I don't want to see whatever film I'm seeing today. It's just over-consuming that the brass, as you said.
Yeah, I'm off to New York in April, and I hope that I can see the Statue of the Liberty for the first time with a headphone in my ear, listening to that score.
You're gonna have to do like a handstand.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be on a ferry just doing a handstand and being like, all right, press play now, play now.
And then I just say like, oh my god, what have I got myself in for?
Everybody's wondering what I'm doing. It's a great piece of score, and there is a great clip from our episode on our TikTok where Kris discusses that score, and I think he puts it in a very eloquent way for anybody who wants to go search that out.
And one more thing on that piece of music, and I just absolutely love that they choose not to make it so they don't repeat it really ever again in the film. They use it in a more like in a hummed down, moody way, but you never hear that brass again in the film, and that makes it way more memorable. I love films that use that restraint, and it echoes for it, the journey. And it's crazy that a movie where a lot of stuff happens, and 4 hours later you're walking out, and that still sticks with you. And that's not the only thing. I mean, there's so many other things, but it's incredible. That movie, that scene is enough to warrant a $50 million budget for the film, as let alone 9.9 million. So it's great. I think it's not going to do that well in the Oscars. I think Brody's got probably. I think he's trumping Chalamet for that position. It was a bit of swings roundabouts, but I think it's going to go Brody's way.
Do you think so? Yeah.
But I think that's about the extent of it. But I think it's a real worthy winner.
There you go. My number one is Dune Part 2. And the way I look at these when I put like films down on like personal preference lists, is this the film I want to win? I don't know. But is it the film that I'm going to go back to the most, and the one that I had the most fun with and I had the best experience in the cinema with? And it ticks all those boxes for me. Like, okay, I'm definitely going to watch Nickel Boys again. I'm definitely going to watch Anora again. And then the rest are kind of up in the air for any time soon. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dune Part 2 I've already seen again. I know I'm going to watch it again and again because I love when big, grandiose sci-fis are taken seriously, but they're also still fun. And there's something like I never saw the David Lynch film. I never read the books, so this is kind of my first introduction to Arrakis. I was so developed in that world when we first saw the film, and I just love it. I love everything about it. I love the big sweeping emotional score. I think you're right when you were talking, Max, about the kind of relationship being slightly undeveloped, but it's developed enough for me that I found that ending really powerful. And I think that's probably partly credit to the music and partly credit to Zendaya, who is just, again, fantastic in this role here. And I have so much fun with it. I'm going to watch it over and over again. And I enjoy the hell out of it. I really do. Is it better than some of the other films on this list? I don't know, but personally, yes.
It's worth saying as well that Chani character that Zendaya plays, in the book, she's kind of a nothing character. Like, she is kind of like Paul's wife, and the David Lynch version does the same thing. So I was like happy for the treatment of her in this iteration. But if I come into this for the first time, maybe I would have felt differently. But I agree with you, Alex, on that point. But
she's kind of like symbolic, but a lot of the film I think is quite symbolic rather than literal. Maybe
one of the things that sticks out with me at both of the movies is the tree, or the trees in the first movie. When Chalamet has the conversation with the guy about why is he watering those trees, if water is so precious. And then later on, we see those trees on fire by the Harkonnens. So there's there's little moments like that stick with you.
Definitely. Well, that's our rankings there. I have been listing them, so I can just give everybody a brief lowdown.
Thank God, because I
am. So Max's 9-1 goes Emilia Perez, Wicked, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, The Substance, The Brutalist, and then Anora. Kris, yours goes Emilia Perez, Conclave, Wicked, A Complete Unknown, Nickel Boys, The Substance, Dune Part 2, Anora, and then number 1 as The Brutalist. And mine goes Wicked, Conclave, Emilia Perez, A Complete Unknown, The Brutalist, The Substance, Anora, Nickel Boys, then Dune Part 2. So there's a lowdown of everybody's there. Guys, what do we think? I think we've kind of alluded to the fact that Anora. Do we all think that's going to be the one to win the Best Picture on the night?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think so.
I've heard rumors that people think A Complete Unknown could clinch
really?
it. I think Variety might have predicted it.
I don't think so.
No, I think it's like 6th.
Yeah.
Do you think? I think it was mainly. I think their thinking was it was like the most inoffensive of all the films, so therefore it's going to be rated relatively highly on everybody's list potentially.
I think I have Anora at the moment, but obviously, if BAFTA picks The Brutalist and Courbet gets director there, and then I could see that potentially overtaking Anora, or if Conclave can get picture and then Saggle Ensemble, then maybe see a scenario where one of those two wins. But I think
I can see Conclave
having won Critics' Choice, PGA and DJ, then I think that's the clear front runner.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, then Best Actor. I think it's probably between Timothée Chalamet and Adrian Brody, even though my heart says it should be Common Domingo. Who do you think's winning in that category?
I've got Brody at the moment, but I think The Brutalist is kind of losing steam, so it'd be interesting to see. I think it is it's probably one of the closest of the acting categories, I'd say. But yeah, I think I have Brody for now.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think Chalamet was front running it, but they've both kind of lost steam. It's kind of weird, but I think Chalamet's lost even more. But it's like stock. I feel like I'm talking about stock market at the minute. Like it's all trends and behaviors and stuff like that. Stuff that completely disinterests me.
I mean, to be honest, this is the year if you're going to put money on it, you could win big potentially.
Yeah.
I kind of love it because I'm like a big statty anyway. So, and it's kind of like if movies had sports, this is it.
Yeah,
so it's kind of the chance to be
Truly. I'll skip Best Actress because I think we can all agree Carla Sofia Gascon's going to win, right, guys?
Oh yeah, completely unproblematic person. Yeah, America's sweetheart. Yeah.
No, really, who do we think's winning? Is it Demi Moore or is it Mikey Madison or is it Fernanda Torres? Like it could be her. She could pinch it.
I do think it's the two former you mentioned, but I'm happy for either of them to win. To be honest. I wouldn't be upset either way. My heart says Mikey, but it'd be cool if Demi won as well. And I think the momentum is definitely in our favor. It's been a constant momentum, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, the Oscars have a habit of kind of legacy or presenting legacy awards, and I think particularly this is Demi Moore's time. What about you, Max?
I think it is Demi Moore, though. The thing is, because Anora is kind of if Anora takes picture, director, potentially screenplay, potentially editing, when Anora is so much about Mikey Madison, it kind of feels weird that she's not going to take it. But I think it probably will be Demi Moore, and I think there's another stat about how actors with some kind of makeup involved do really well. It looks like the substance is going to take the makeup Oscar as well. So there's that for as well.
I won't go through all the categories, but I'll do the big ones. Just get your idea on the big ones. Director, who do we think's getting it?
If you asked me last week, I'd have said Courbet, but I think Baker taking home DJ, and then obviously Courbet didn't win Critics' Choice either. That went to John M. Chu. I think it's Baker at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean, it'd be interesting to see what BAFTA do.
I'd love Coralie Farge to win it, but we'll see.
I completely agree. It's Baker for me.
Do you want to do animated feature? You got opinions on this?
I haven't really been following any sort of the online discourse about the trends of this, but like I feel like if you asked me the whole time, I would say The Wild Robot, just as sort of a real bridge the gap between commercial and a really good artistic film.
What about you,
I'm
Matt?
the same. I think The Wild Robot will take it. I think probably its closest competition is Play, but I think The Wild Robot will take it.
Have you guys seen all the best international feature films? I know I haven't.
I haven't seen Girl with the Needle or Flow, yeah.
Yeah, those are the, and obviously I'm Still Here for me, but obviously you have. Yeah, do you think it has a good chance of winning Best International?
I think it's definitely the closest it's been because of the Emilia Perez stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
it's just how many voters are going to get swayed by that and where they're going to go.
I've heard that Emilia Perez might win this one because there is still a lot of love for it and people feel safer voting for it Best International Feature Film. My personal favourite in this, as we all know, is The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and that is actually going to be the topic of our next episode. So you can come back then to hear more about that. But I did mention it in Top 10 of the Year, but I love that film. I don't think it's going to win, unfortunately. I think it's probably going to be Emilia Perez. I've heard a lot of good things about The Girl with the Needle, but I think it's probably too depressing to win from what I've heard. But I really want to catch it, which it is on Mubi, so it should be easy to do.
I saw a clip of it that Mubi put on their Instagram page yesterday, and I watched the clip 4 times because I thought it was so beautiful. And it was I don't know the characters yet, but it was 2 characters that were sitting in a cinema together. And they were watching the film and they were laughing, and it was so beautiful. Like I felt like I was, I can't wait to see that film.
Definitely. All right, Best Supporting Actress. Who have we got up here? We got Zoe Saldana, Felicity Jones, Monica Barbaro, Ariana Grande, and Isabella Rossellini. Maybe Ariana Grande clinches it. Maybe Zoe Saldana.
I've got Zoe winning, but if I was voting, I would definitely go Ariana Grande.
I think Ariana's a fun pick to win, but yeah, I think you're right with Saldana. That's just where it's going, right?
Seems that way. So then we go to
no Isabel Rossellini.
I think her part is too small. I don't like. Again, it could be that.
It is. I was surprised to see her in the category.
Thing.
Yeah.
But then,
but she's had a good year. Has she not had? She's been in like 3 movies last year, so it could be like a collective nomination. But she's then again, everything at the minute.
What's her name? Won for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and she had a very
Michelle Yeoh.
No, not
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, Jamie Lee Curtis. Yes.
Yeah. And that was a bit of a legacy award, wasn't it? You know, like she wasn't.
That was the year of legacy awards.
Yeah. So Best Supporting Actor, we've got Guy Pearce, Yuri Borisov, Edward Norton, Kieran Culkin, Jeremy Strong. I think from what I've heard, it's probably between Yuri Borisov and Kieran Culkin.
Yeah, it's cool that Yuri's in there. But everybody, when you hear people talk about A Real Pain, everybody's just so excited to talk about Kieran Culkin in that film. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think, Max?
I think Culkin's going to win. I mean, it's a great performance, but I always think he is doing very similar to the stuff he's doing in Succession. It's kind of very similar bounciness. But yeah, he is that movie really, which is weird because he's a supporting actor. But there you go.
Well, I think those are probably the main categories to kind of talk about. Part of me wants to talk about live action short film because we interviewed one of the nominees, and fingers crossed Anuja wins, so we can put on the episode title "Interview with Oscar-winning director." Is that selfish of me? I have only seen one other film on the list that was very good as well, but Anuja is great. So and it's on Netflix now for anybody who wants to catch up with it. But I think. Interesting Oscar race this year.
Yeah, kind of sick of it already.
Looking forward to it being over.
I can say that at the end of the episode so people won't stop listening.
You're like, I'm sick of talking about this.
Can everybody just get along, right?
I think that probably brings us to the end of this episode. Max, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your opinions. It's been great to have you.
It's been great being here, and I look forward to maybe doing something like this again.
I would like that as well.
Definitely. Doors definitely open.
Definitely. We're really rubbish at arranging things, so keep nudging us. And you live nearby, so, let us know when you're in town, and we'll, in my town, and when Kris is up as well, we can all go for a drink or something.
We're not lazy. We're just scared of rejection.
Brilliant. But no, it's been great. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and visit Max on his Instagram channel at Max Martin Reviews. Really interesting stuff. And you are very active on Instagram, Max. Are you like a post a day guy?
Yeah, I'm a post a day. So I try and do reviews Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I do like recommendations on streaming on Monday. And then theme post Tuesday and Thursday, and a ranking Wednesday.
While doing a PhD,
yeah,
and watching all the films as well. Well, you're a busy man, Max. But if you ever, there is an opening on the Film Angles social media channels, because I find it very difficult to keep up with everything. So if you ever want fancy doing some more, let us know. But yeah, no, it was great. I'm sure we'll have you on again. But yeah, that's been our episode. We are taking a 1 week break next week, but when we're back, we'll be back when the Oscars winners have been announced. So I know you're sick of it, Kris, but I'm sure we'll dive into it a little bit at the start of our next episode as to what's happened there. Who Will Smith has slapped, all that kind of stuff. We'll give you the
it's
lowdown.
Been long enough that you can't actually make that joke again.
Yeah, I know. We really can't make that joke anymore, but I made it anyway. But yeah, when we're back, we'll do that, and then we'll have an Iranian double bill where we'll be talking about the Seed of the Sacred Fig and our Sight and Sound blind spot, which will be close up. So join us back then in 2 weeks' time. For that has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist. If you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next time for more cinematic discussions. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.